Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Today's topic is simple living and high thinking, right? As far as simple living is concerned, that has been the way of life for people since time immemorial. Nowadays, when people from the city come to a place like this, they think it's charming. But traditionally, most people in the world lived on the land with domesticated animals and produced food. It was only with the onset of the Industrial Revolution that urbanization began. And nowadays in America, only 2% of the population is engaged in agricultural pursuits. Almost everybody lives in the cities. And even those who are engaged in agriculture, that's all completely mechanized. So that a typical farm is similar to a factory. And they even talk of factory farming, in which the animals are treated as economic units, and huge fields are farmed with chemical fertilizers and insecticides, which is often sprayed by plane. We're talking about such big fields. And the crops are harvested by combine harvesters. And even the agricultural products, they are sold as what is called futures, like shares in the stock market. I want There was no stock market in Poland until recently. It was all communist. We don't have a word for stock market, is it? Now they have, yeah, but the older people, they're not used to all this. So, industrialization, urbanization, mechanization, these were all considered in the past as the panacea for all human problems. That people in future, by the grace of modern science and technology, will live very happy lives. I remember reading as a child that they were saying that in future everything will be done by machine and people will have so much leisure time. But what we actually find one generation later is that people are working harder than ever. So many people throughout the world in the industrialized, commercialized world, they are looking for alternative lifestyle, finding that the city life is far from being like heaven, more like hell. They talk about the concrete jungle, because in the jungle there are many fearsome wild animals. But in the modern cities, it's even more fearsome. For instance, there are areas in cities which are called no-go areas. Translate that into Polish somehow or other. No-go because the police don't go there. It's too dangerous for them. And no respectable person goes there. These are the areas where gangs flourish, who compete with each other for the right to run prostitution rings and drug rings, etc. And of course regular robbery and crime and all that kind of thing also. And even I mean, it's not that everyone who lives in the big city is a pervert or a criminal. Although the statistics given by sociologists are dismal. How large sections of the populations are engaged in what they call substance abuse. Last year on the phone, I was speaking with my sister in England, and she was saying that she's engaged in some government agency trying to help people with substance abuse. And in my naivety, I asked, why don't they just call it drug abuse? And then she explained, probably all of you are more familiar with, you might be more familiar with this kind of phenomena than myself, that it's not just drugs like LSD and cocaine, but also it's very common that people buy a petrol lighter and sniff that, or some glue and sniff that, and get their kicks like that. And what to speak of alcohol? Alcohol is also a dangerous drug. All these drugs, they have a very bad effect on the physical body and also the consciousness of people. We know that drunken people are often violent and even murderous. Yet alcohol, tobacco, drug and substance abuse is common even in children nowadays, which suggests that people in general are not very happy. Because if you have inner contentment, you don't need to sniff something or drink something to make you happy. And actually it doesn't make anyone happy. There's no such thing as a happy, satisfied alcoholic or heroin addict. But these things are so common in modern society that people take it as normal. And that's only one aspect of the general social malaise that is ubiquitous in modern society. So many people are looking for alternatives. And there are many village communes being set up by people looking for a more ideal way of life, with the idea that we should live simply on the land and love each other. And some of these communes, they also incorporate intoxication into their way of life, and free sex, with the idea that, well, let's peacefully live a degraded life. So this Krishna conscious movement is also setting up such farm projects. But our motto is not simply simple living. That simple living in and of itself is nothing very special, because the foxes and dogs that live in the country, they also live a very simple life. But simple living in and of itself is not the goal, but there should be high thinking. And we actually see that in Europe, all the great religious thought that came before the industrial age. And with the beginning of what they called the Enlightenment, that was the beginning of the downturn for religious thought in the Western world. The Enlightenment was the direct precursor of the industrial age. And it was called the Enlightenment because it was considered that people could start to think for themselves instead of relying on God and Scripture. However, inevitably the revolution against theism ended in animalism, because man without a higher purpose in life is simply an animal, as is described in the Hitopadesh, a Sanskrit Vedic literature. Hitopadesh means beneficial instruction. If people are leaving, they can take prasad before they go. Make sure they get prasad. They already got, okay. So it said in the Hitopadesh, Ahara nidra bhayamaitunam cha samanyametat pashubhyanarayanam, that human beings and animals have in common eating, sleeping, mating and defending. Dharmo hite sham adhiko vishesham dharmena hina pashubhyanarayanam. And that dharma, or the godly life, that is the special prerogative of human life that is not found in the animal life. And therefore, a human being without dharma is simply a two-legged animal. It's simple arithmetic. Animal plus dharma equals human being. A plus B equals C. C minus B equals A. So human being minus dharma, or religion is simply an animal. So this is the situation, especially in modern society, that without the endeavor for understanding God, human beings are celebrating their elevation or degradation to the status of animals. And they actually celebrate or take delight in animalistic propensities. So this, as I was saying, this Krishna conscious movement is principally meant for high thinking. What is the purpose of life? What is life? Is it simply a combination of chemicals? What happens after death? Is there God? If so, what is He like? What is our relationship with Him? Why do we have to suffer when we don't want to? These questions are called Brahma Jignasa, or inquiry into the absolute truth. The Brahma Sutra, one of the principal Vedic literatures, states Athato Brahma Jignasa. Now, in the human form of life, we should inquire into the absolute truth. The Vedic literatures describe that the soul is different from the body is temporary, the soul is eternal. The soul, by being eternal, has no death and also no birth. Before this body existed, we existed. We have been in many, many bodies. Now in the human form of life, we have the facility to inquire into the absolute truth and make a solution to the problem of repeated birth and death. So human life is meant for this purpose. And simply building big buildings and developing technology and finding more and more intense ways to gratify our senses are simply animalistic propensities. Now, in modern society, there is propaganda that previously man was extremely primitive and now we are very advanced. And the proof of our being very advanced is that we have TVs and computers and modern medicine and all this kind of thing. But we understand that in the Vedic tradition, they were actually far more advanced previously. Advancement means advancement in consciousness. Who is more advanced? A person who lives very simply and cultivates godly qualities, such as peacefulness, self-control, knowledge of God, austerity, cleanliness, or someone who has a very high level of technological sophistication, but is extremely selfish and only thinks in terms of his own profit, doesn't care about others, except how to exploit them. So the Vedic culture recommended a generally simple way of life, although it was not without developed knowledge, even in the fields of science, medicine, etc. The Vedic literature speaks of interplanetary travel, which was possible not by firing a space rocket. Incidentally, if you think about it, the space rockets that they fire from Cape Kennedy, they are more or less the same technology as the little fireworks that children blow up, right? You light it at the bottom when it goes up in the sky. It's actually very gross technology. But the Vedic sages, they would travel from planet to planet by mystic power acquired by the purity of their lifestyle. And there was advanced medical knowledge, which is also becoming popular in the West now. It's called Ayurveda, the Vedic science of medicine. There was atomic physics. There's a word in ancient Sanskrit for atom, paramanu. So there was very developed knowledge even in the material sphere. But the Vedic sages knew that this world is not all in all. That we have to live in such a way that we can understand the absolute truth. So it was recommended to live as simply as possible without adopting unnecessary material encumbrances. So that culture is being attempted to be reproduced here in the Western world. The Krishna conscious movement is offering a spiritual alternative to the grossly materialistic modern so-called civilization. It's also offering a developed religious understanding, presenting who is God, what is our relationship with Him, how we can live in that relationship and develop that blissful relationship, how we can live our lives 24 hours a day in a compact with God. Now, this simple living, that is recommended to, so first of all, that we can unclutter our lifestyle. Modern life is very complex. And the complexities divert our attention away from the real purpose of life, which is to understand who we are and what is our relationship with God. Also, the modern lifestyle that tends to drag our consciousness down. Living in the big cities, we tend to get dragged into lower kinds of thoughts and activities. Whereas living in the lap of nature, we can automatically see the hand of God at every moment. You won't find many farmers who are atheists. They know that we depend on a higher power for sufficient and timely rains, for instance. And they see the marvels of nature unfolding before them every day. The city life is highly artificial. And it may appear to the city dweller that everything is made by man. Food comes from a supermarket. Water comes from a tap. Light comes from electric switches. The city dweller doesn't know whether it's the full moon day or the new moon day. It's all the same to him. He thinks that, well, we have conquered nature. This is, of course, foolishness, because we're all subject to nature. For instance, we all have to die. However mechanized our life may be, there is no solution to death. We might die in a highly advanced hospital with all kinds of wires and pipes attached to our bodies, and a computer printout will come. That brainwave, 0. Respiration, 0. Blood circulation, 0. Conclusion, dead. So this may be a very technologically progressive way to die, for which we may be very proud, but the result is the same. So, actual human life means to consider what is life, what is death, what is beyond death. Generally when we speak about death, people say, oh, don't talk about that. But not talking about it won't make it go away. So he may say, well, let's live happily as long as we can. This is a foolish proposal. A more intelligent proposal is to think what comes after that. A scientifically minded person may say, nothing comes after that. But that's not a scientific statement. Because if it was scientific, you should be able to demonstrate it, and they can't. So, spiritually enlightened people in all cultures throughout the world, throughout history, understand that only the body dies, the soul does not die. So if we consider that we are eternal, then this life in this body that we are presently leading isn't actually very important. It's not very important compared to eternity up ahead. And if we consider that human life is meant for preparing for that which comes after, then we should be more interested in focusing on this than trying to enjoy our present situation. So simple living is not, in the Krishna conscious movement, simple living is not adopted simply to enjoy looking at the sunshine, if it ever comes. But rather because simple living leaves our brains relatively uncluttered so that we can concentrate on the actually important purpose of life. And also because simple living means we don't have so many artificial needs. In modern life, people have machines for doing everything. They have a machine for cleaning the floor, a machine for washing clothes, a machine for going from one place to the other, a machine for going up in the building, you don't have to walk up the stairs. They even have electric toothbrushes. They never became popular, but that's pretty lazy, isn't it? If you're too lazy to brush your teeth. And the funny thing is that you can buy a machine for exercising also, or pay money to go to the gymnasium. If you just cleaned the floor by hand and walked here and there and walked up the stairs, then you wouldn't need to you'd get your exercise automatically. But people think they're very advanced. I go in a machine to work, and I work some machine at work, and I come home, and then I clean the house by machine, cook the food by machine, and then I do exercise with the machine also. And when you get released from prison, office or factory, then you spend the 1 or 2 days a week repairing all the machines that get broken. And you think, well, this is very advanced. So, yes, we agree it's advanced. It's advanced foolishness. So, we are suggesting a different kind of advancement. No need of so many machines. Live simply. What are the actual necessities of life? Food, shelter, clothing. By God's arrangement, all these things are provided for in nature. Although it will come as a great surprise to the city dweller, food, it doesn't come from a supermarket, it's produced on the land. Clothing is also produced from the land. From plants, cotton, jute, flax. These are all plants that produce, that can be used for making clothing. Leather and wool come from animals. Nowadays, so much clothing is made from oil. Nylon clothing, polyester. Unnecessary. Such a big difficulty. You have to get the oil out of the earth and process it, and it pollutes everything. And that clothing, it's actually not very good for the skin. So, by the arrangement of nature, there's no need for big industrial enterprises to make clothing. And for shelter, we find all over the world there are different kinds of traditional building materials according to the different locality. Bricks are made from clay, from the earth. Houses are built from stone, from wood. So everything is provided for simply by nature. And an actually intelligent person does not become sucked into the complex industrial society, but lives simply. Simply means physically simply, but develops higher consciousness of understanding transcendent reality. So this is the purpose of the Krishna conscious movement in starting these farm communities, to offer an alternative to people. How you can live simply and very healthily, taking fresh food, which is simply not available in the cities. City people do not know what fresh vegetables taste like, because by the time they get to the market, they're already old. They don't know what fresh milk tastes like. They don't know what fresh air is, except sometimes they come roaring out in their cars into the country and sometimes open the window a little bit. Modern cities are so noisy 24 hours a day that people who live in the city, when they come to the country, they can't go to sleep at night because it sounds too quiet. They're just not used to it. They find the peacefulness, they're just not habituated to it. So, like I say, the Krishna conscious movement is meant for living a way of life that is better physically, mentally, socially, and most important, spiritually. That the members of the Krishna conscious movement are meant for developing the highest consciousness of understanding who is God and what is our relationship with Him. Now, another essential aspect of the simple living in Krishna consciousness is cow protection. In modern society, or in the Western world, people do not know the importance of cows. Even from the material point of view, the cow is a very important animal. Because the milk of the cow that milk is conducive for developing the brain tissues which are suitable for developing higher spiritual consciousness. And in Vedic society, the ghee made from cow's milk is essential for the sacrifices which are the chief or the focal point of Vedic society. Even the urine and dung of the cow has got great medicinal and purificatory value. Apart from that, the cow is the emblem of religion. Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is celebrated as a cowherd boy. Krishna loves cows. He loves everyone, but he especially loves cows. By killing cows, human society kills its own prospects of spiritual advancement. It is unnecessary violence. Cow is a very innocent animal. She gives us milk. In that way, she is just like our mother. But we are so ungrateful that we treat her as an economic unit, and we mercilessly send her for slaughter. So this must bring sinful reactions. We cannot understand God if we engage in the sinful activity of killing cows. On the other hand, if we protect cows, then automatically that will help us to develop higher consciousness. This understanding of the importance of cows it seems illogical to our modern, empirically minded man in the Western world. And they mock the Hindus for considering the cow sacred. But we'll find throughout the Hindu and Buddhist world that no one will like to eat cow's meat or kill cows. It requires subtly developed high consciousness to understand the importance of cow protection. People who have very gross intelligence, they cannot understand this. But nevertheless, it's a fact that if the cows are protected, then human society will flourish, both economically and spiritually. The economic and societal progress of human society, of human civilization, does not rest on economic manipulations and building factories, but it is based on living a life in harmony with nature and pleasing to God, who is the coordinator of nature. So this Krishna conscious movement is based on very deep and ancient knowledge of how to lead this human life in such a way that we don't have to get born again, so that we can go to the eternal spiritual world to live with Krishna eternally. So all the detailed understanding of this great culture and the philosophy behind it is not possible to cover in a basic talk like this. But we invite all the guests to inquire more into this great Vedic culture, which has some completely different approach to life, and offers an alternative to that of the modern mindless civilization. An alternative in which people can live simply, in a healthy manner, very happily, understand God, live their life in relationship with Him, be enlightened, and develop all good qualities. So this combination of simple living and high living is excellent for human life. Our movement is attempting to develop along these lines, despite the difficulties of trying to do so in a highly materialistic, mechanized society. And we invite everyone to take part in this, either by giving your life or part of your life or your intelligence to try to understand it, Come sometimes here, see what's going on, try to take part in it. Please examine this intelligently. Human life is meant for developing our intelligence, to understand the highest goal of life, which is not simply to live in automated apparent comfort, but to understand our very deep, very real, and very meaningful relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is the basic philosophy of Krishna consciousness given in this great book, Bhagavad Gita, which is translated in Polish as Bhagavad Gita Taka Yaka Jest. Most important book which can give us completely different, elevated perspective on life. There are many such books available on the book stall outside. I hope Bhagavad Gita is available now. Is it? Huh? You don't have Gitas for sale? Out of stock. Yes, Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. I've also written one book. This is in English, but it's especially along the lines of what I've been talking today. This is Glimpses of Traditional Indian Life, which describes how people lived and still do, lived a very simple, God-centered life. So, those who know English may like to see this book. Also, I've written a book which gives guidance in how to practice Krishna consciousness. This is available also in Polski. What's it called? I can't read it. So these are available. Does anyone have any questions? Doubts? Anyone disagree with anything I said? Well, if everyone agrees, then we should all just take up this life of Krishna consciousness. What do you think? Well, we can start that right now. Krishna consciousness is very simple, and it's based on chanting the names of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna.